Hey everyone, I'm Mark, and whether you're looking at your next purchase in career mode or you want to do some exploring of your own in free flight, picking an easy and relatively bug-free plane is going to make for a much more enjoyable experience. So we're going to look at the best planes for beginners across a bunch of categories today. I've limited the list to the standard edition planes to make it as accessible as possible to everyone, and while not all of these are in career mode, they are all in free flight, which for me is still the best way to explore the planes and the world of flight sim as well. I'm going to start with a special mention for the C-172 because not only is it one of the most versatile planes, they've also clearly spent more time on this one since it's one of the centerpieces of career mode. The sounds feel improved over 2020, and almost everything in the plane is functional, from the different switches and even the circuit breakers, on top of being able to throw floats or skis on it for special occasions. All of that combined is kind of what makes it a decent choice for any mission, be it backcountry flying, learning to fly on instruments, or anything else in between really. Now, if you're looking to do specifically more bush flying, there are a few planes that are more geared towards it, and your best bet is actually going to be with the Cub Crafter's X-Cub. It's gotten a very similar treatment to the C-172 in the sense that almost all of its systems are functional, it flies really nice, and there's a few customizations that you can do to it, like chunky wheels for those grassy runways or skis if you're landing on snow. There is a bit of an adaptation period to it since it's a tail dragger, but once you get the hang of it, you'll have a blast flying it around in the mountains and landing at some remote strips like Johnson Creek. In a similar vein to the X-Cub, the Draco is also a ton of fun and has good systems depth, but it's definitely a handful on takeoff and landing, so I wouldn't quite call it a beginner plane. That's mostly due to it having a PT6, which is a turboprop engine, and once you get a handle on it, it's definitely one of the top planes in the standard edition, so I'd really recommend giving it a go regardless. If you're looking to do some low and slow city exploration instead in a traditional plane, the Diamond DA40 is a decent option since it's easy to fly with its G1000 and FADEC controlled engine, so you don't have to worry about prop or mixture controls or anything like that. It can easily get up to 130 knots to get to wherever you're going, and then slow it right down to 90 or even 100 knots to get a slower and better view of everything that's going on at ground level. The other good option for city exploration is the Optica, which technically gets my vote for the best Quirky plane, but it also works great for sightseeing as well. It's stable at low speed, it works great, and the bug-eye cockpit gives you pretty good views in all directions, and then if you want to get the most from your wing views, your best bet is going to be to set those up below the wing to maximize visibility. In terms of turboprops, of all the options available, my top pick for beginners is the C208 Caravan, since it builds on a lot of the foundations that you'll have learned from the C172, but in a much bigger and faster plane. Turbine engines work very differently from pistons though, and it's worth it to take the time to learn how to keep it running properly by keeping the ITT in the green and avoid things like hot starts, which can destroy your engine instantly before you even get going. A turboprop engine also has reverse thrust and something called the beta range that allows you to taxi at much more comfortable speeds without having to sit on the brakes the whole time, and you'll need to configure that with your controllers to leverage it properly. The other turboprop that I really like, but I remember being a bit more difficult at first, is the TBM 930, so you could try it alongside the C208 since it's also a Garmin unit and there's a lot of similarities in the functionality with a little bit more automation. The TBM is a fair bit quicker than the C208 at cruise, so you can cover longer distances faster, but it has a similar landing speed, which is nice because it makes it easier to get used to. Getting a grasp on all of those concepts will then open up moving to turboprops with different avionics suites like the PC-12 and even some of the payware planes like the TBM 850 when they start to come across to 2024. The PC-12 and the TBM can both be used as regional business jets, but more typically when you think of these you imagine jet engines instead, and we have a couple of options that we can look at for that. For me, the best starter option here is the Vision Jet, which was originally a payware plane in 2020 from the Flight Effects team, which has now been tweaked for 2024. It comes with Garmin avionics, which means that you can easily pick it up if you're already familiar with the G1000, and with its Mach 0.5 cruise speed, you can do hops like New York to Boston or anything with a similar distance in about an hour. The other plane which got a lot of updates in 2020 and is still a great business jet is the CJ4, even though in 2024 it does have this weird flicker bug from the external view at the moment, so hopefully that gets fixed soon. It's a different set of avionics than you're going to be used to, but it's a great step towards airliners if you're planning on learning those, because it'll be similar in terms of the flow that you go through to set it up. The autopilot isn't too different from the Garmin's though, so your experience with GA will still help you get up to speed faster at the same time as learning the differences with operating jet engines and things like when to use the speed brakes. The great thing about the CJ4 is that it can cover longer distances at a high cruise and altitude, typically up to 45,000 feet and 0.7 Mach, so it can extend your range and it makes some routes much shorter to fly. The only thing really missing from the CJ4 is reverse power, but it's small and light enough that you don't really need it either, and you'll be able to get it into all of the typical business jet destinations like Aspen or Telluride. Now, once you're ready to step up to the big boys with underwing engines, the options that we have in 2024 today are definitely better than what we had when 2020 initially launched. Picking an airliner for beginners is always tricky though, because they are complex machines even in flight sim, and the system's depth of a lot of them can be a lot for a beginner who just wants to get up in the air and fly the thing. With that in mind, I think the easiest and most functional option is the A320neo, which was built by INI Builds, and it has a fair bit of automation that won't get you as bogged down as you would be with, say, the 737. All the INI planes also have panel states that you can access through their EFB to let you quickly change the state of the airplane from cold and dark to ready for takeoff, and then you just need to learn how to program the box properly to get going. Just to be clear though, there is still a steep learning curve here, and to give you an idea, it probably took me a good month or two when I first started learning airliners before I felt comfortable with all of it. The really neat thing though is that once you know how to fly the A320, you can easily jump to the A321, the A330, or even the Beluga, since they share a common platform with their avionics across all of Airbus. Even the A400, which is technically a turboprop and my personal favorite, will be easy enough to pick up once you understand how a lot of the concepts work, like how to program the McDo, the difference between managed and open climb, and so on. Now, there are obviously other good options across all airplane types that you could look at in Flight Sim 2024, especially if you have premium deluxe like the Savage Norden, the Longitude, or even the 747, which is decently modeled in the standard edition. I think this short list that we just went through is a good place to start though, because you can build your knowledge across a few different types at once, and then each step along the way you'll learn more little details here and there that'll help you out across all the different types. Make sure to let me know in the comments what your favorite plane is so far in Flight Sim 2024, and while you're there, please make sure to like and subscribe if you learned something useful today.